Well, I learned what sudden cardiac arrest was when my son Jeff had a sudden cardiac arrest a little over a year ago. That's when I first really knew what SCA meant, and that you could have 3 of them and still be alive.
I'll take you back then to July of 2020 when I first had symptoms. I was sitting at this desk right here working, and I had chest pain, and it was very strange. And I was like, a vice grabbed me in the middle. My arms were heavy, like I was trying to walk through mud. I had the vice in my chest. I couldn't sleep.
I became very symptomatic of ultimately heart failure. The biggest one was leg and arm edema.
And I remember talking to my daughter and to my husband and telling them, I don't feel right. I don't feel right. I don't feel right. Something's wrong.
That Monday morning, we decided to just go to the ER instead of waiting for my MRI later that day. I was admitted, but they kept saying, your heart is fine. They did the EKG, they did the MRI.
And I remember watching the staff and how perfectly choreographed everything was. They knew what they were doing, getting me hooked up to the machines, talking to me, watching it. And once I remember the person operating the EKG stating that, how are you even conscious right now? It didn't make any sense to them.
And what happened was terrifying, because all of a sudden, what I felt in the middle of my chest was a twig snap, literally crack.
And I finally decided I needed an ambulance.
And the paramedic commented on how sweaty I was. And I immediately went into cardiac arrest.
As soon as they got there, I told them my chest hurt and I face planted and my heart had stopped.
Kind of remember just deciding to stand up, and I was hanging onto the IV pole, and next thing you know, it's 2 days later and I got bruises all over my face and my hip. We talked about it, bypass. I very much remember the technicians to come and do the ultrasound to find the veins where they might be good to come from, and talking about a apparatus called an LVAD, and pretty much just waiting and hoping and pulling more water off of me and trying one medication after the next, waiting until the thing, well, wouldn't you know it, sure enough, episode 2 happens, and it was kind of big. But I have no recollection of any of the 3 episodes other than like an hour before the first one, and then waking up a day later. And then for the really big one, an hour before it, and then waking up 21 days later.
We work on the ambulance, so we run into cardiac arrest quite frequently. It's a call that's unfortunate, but it happens more than you'd think. So we try to do the best pre-hospital care we can for those affected by cardiac arrest. I think any time in a cardiac arrest situation, there's a lot going on. It's high stakes. A lot of times there's lay people or family members that are worked up because it's a very critical situation. Our job is to provide basically everything that a hospital would do for someone in cardiac arrest in that person's house. So it's difficult for patient access, if it's in a small bathroom or a difficult area in the house. Finding a good workspace is sometimes difficult.
The team had to yank me out of my bathroom into the hallway, I later learned, by my arm and leg, where my husband had to watch them perform CPR.
And to watch, when you shock a patient, like the trauma that patient receives from the shock, and then the family members see that, they're like, holy moly. People don't realize how rough it is to the patient of doing CPR, cracking ribs and stuff like that. It's pretty gruesome. It's not like on the movies, let's just say.
The hardest part is truthfully probably trying to determine that there was no exact cause.
It's both good and bad to not know what caused your cardiac arrest, because the good part is you don't have this whole list of icky things that it could be as a cause of your cardiac arrest. But the bad thing is you don't know it, so you're left with a lot of uncertainty about how long are you going to live and what's your prognosis and could it happen again and all that kind of stuff.
The scenario that we're so used to is dealing with individuals that medically cardiac arrest or trauma related, but to just come upon somebody that we don't know what truly caused it, that's probably the hardest part of it. We get so accustomed to working a multitude of different scenarios that just the unknown ideology is definitely the hardest avenue.
So a heart attack or a myocardial infarction is really the event that is likely going to potentially lead to the sudden cardiac arrest. So the heart attack is really defined by a lack of blood flow to cardiac cells, and what happens in that is those cardiac cells lose oxygen. They can't create energy like they need to contract appropriately, and they start to die. Now, not everybody who has a heart attack has sudden cardiac arrest. If you can stop that heart attack in a certain amount of time, you can save that heart. You can save them from having potential sudden cardiac arrest. But the cardiac arrest is going to be something that if the heart attack occurs for a long period of time, if there is enough oxygen lost, the heart could go into some type of lethal arrhythmia. And that lethal arrhythmia is what is going to be the main cause of the sudden cardiac arrest. The prevention is probably going to come from a perspective of try not to develop cardiac disease, right? So that it really kind of starts there is managing your cholesterol, managing your blood pressure, managing your diet to decrease your risk of CAD.
I let things compound so much to nearly complete organ, all of them shutting down. And I should not be here. I'm very fortunate that all the different things ended up working. If you're a smoker, stop. I never thought I would not smoke, but I did smoke until I died, and then I got lucky, and here I am. So I don't do that anymore, or haven't. Moderation, and everything else. Sure, go ahead, eat the cheeseburger, but eat the cheeseburger, don't eat 12 of them. I had a hard time with excess, with a lot of stuff. So
one of the big things that changed in our lives was my husband and I both decided it was time to take ourselves seriously. So we've both lost a lot of weight. I lost 60 pounds. My husband lost 75, 80 pounds. So that's a new normal for us. We're very conscious about how much we eat, when we eat, etc.
Now, if somebody maybe has had a heart attack, we want to prevent them from having a cardiac arrest. And so then in that situation, there could be some medications that are given to help control the rhythm of the heart so they don't go into a cardiac arrest.
I am not allowed to exercise. I'm not allowed to raise my heart rate, because I take so much medication now. There's a drug called isosorbide mononitrate. It's a long-acting nitroglycerin medication. And I take 60 milligrams of that twice a day just to keep the spasms at bay. And then if I have any spasms, any breakthrough, I take nitroglycerin, like the actual tablets under my tongue.
making sure I'm taking my medicines. I did a count yesterday, it's 14 a day, which is down from 22 when I got discharged.
Or if an individual has a history of cardiac arrest, we can get an implantable defibrillator put in that acts as a pacemaker and defibrillator. So if that pacemaker sees or senses some type of arrhythmia that is linked to cardiac arrest, like a ventricular tachycardia or ventricular fibrillation, then that defibrillator kicks in right away, shocks the heart to prevent them from going into that rhythm. So there was a patient that I had when I was a student doing an internship in cardiac rehab that I had learned had a sudden cardiac arrest in his kitchen. His wife performed life-saving procedures, so CPR, before the paramedics came. They got him resuscitated. Mentally, he seemed fine when he was with us exercising. In fact, he was very jovial, very high energy, very excited to be there, kind of the life of the party, telling jokes. We all got along, and he was great. And one day I remember standing behind the monitors watching his ECG while he was exercising. And one of the nurses that she had a ton of experience, like an old school nurse has seen a lot. And she kind of was shaking her head, looking at him like, what's going on? She's like, oh, I feel bad for him. I'm like, what do you feel bad about? See, he's doing great. Yeah, but he's really in like some serious denial. And so what she was seeing was the mental strain that he was going through, that maybe it's more of like a survivor's guilt, right? Survivor's guilt. Maybe there was some guilt there that he put his family in the situation, right? Almost dying. And that would have really affected his family financially, also mentally, but also the putting his family member through that to do the things that she had to do in their house.
Another hard part is that nobody really understands what you've gone through. And people don't understand, they all think you've had a heart attack. They don't understand what a cardiac arrest is. And that makes it kind of lonely.
I don't know the family's perspective on that and how they feel, but I can see that there's probably some trauma as well that they experience. Like, is this going to happen again?
I'm prone to anxiety. And I have found that the whole experience has just meant that my anxiety attacks are much more easily triggered. When he had his sudden cardiac arrest, the first one, that was bad enough. I mean, it was a surprise and it was bad enough, but he did come out of it and they got his heart going again. And then you thought, oh, we made it through and he's going to be okay. And then the next thing we know, he's having another one. And then they're putting him on all these machines. And each time it was a major event, like, okay, so this machine, putting him on this machine is dangerous.
The last machine thing he was on was an Impella, and they were going to take that out. And again, they said, we don't know if he'll come out of this okay. And I remember they were taking him out of the room on the gurney, and he stopped in the hallway, and all I could say was, I love you, and I'll see you on the other side.
Just not knowing if he was going to make it through, not knowing what his life was going to look like afterwards, what our life would look like afterwards if we lost him. Just no control. It was in someone else's hands.
I think we've got the impact of the patient who survives, right? The impact of the family of the patient who survives, and then the impact of the family when the patient doesn't survive, right? And so cardiac arrest, I think, hits each one of those areas.